Hello, fellow Americans, and those of you that aren't American, like the one dude that listens in the Netherlands, several of you in Ukraine, and many Canadians as well. Welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Wednesday, February 19th, 2025, the 50th day of the year, the second of 4 Wednesdays this month. And if you're in any part of the country dealing with severe winter weather, the Plains states or the Mid-Atlantic where the storm is headed now, there are 29 more days until spring. President Trump is scheduled to return to the White House around 9 o'clock tonight from his Mar-a-Lago resort and home in Palm Beach, Florida, after making 2 stops earlier today in Miami. Trump arrived at his Doral Golf Club this morning and then this afternoon is attending a meeting listed as global financiers and tech executives at a hotel on Miami Beach. There are protests outside the hotel right now, which will likely be played up by the mainstream media. They're protesting because the meeting is hosted by Saudi Arabia, who Trump is trying to convince to resettle Palestinians from Gaza and get them to make billions of dollars of investments in the United States like he's already done with some other countries. If you live or work in Miami-Dade, by the way, the presidential motorcade is scheduled to leave Miami Beach for the airport around 6:15, 6:30 this evening, so good luck getting around town, especially for my friend and long-time listener, Tony the limo driver. It'll be a rough day of travel in Miami, or I should say worse than it usually is. Tuesday, the president signed an executive order at Mar-a-Lago expanding access to IFV, in vitro fertilization, another promise he had made during his campaign, and as always, took questions from reporters.
I've just finished signing some executive orders, and if we could start with that, Will, you might want to come up here and just explain what we did. Thank you.
Good afternoon, y'all. A short while ago, President Trump signed three items. The first is an executive order relating to the affordability and availability of in vitro fertilization and other fertility treatments. These are treatments that have become unaffordable for many Americans, or have been unaffordable for many Americans. And the executive order is a directive to the Domestic Policy Council to examine ways to make IVF and other fertility treatments more affordable for more Americans. The second item that we signed was a presidential memorandum imposing radical transparency requirements on government departments and agencies, in keeping with President Trump and the administration's broader commitment to governmental transparency. What this presidential memorandum would do is require, as waste, fraud, and abuse is uncovered, as programs are canceled, and ultimately as taxpayer dollars are saved, this presidential memorandum would require departments and agencies to make all of the details of that freely available to the public. Lastly, we have another executive order that President Trump signed relating to independent agencies. This executive order would establish important oversight functions in the Office of Management and Budget and its subsidiary office, OIRA, supervising independent agencies and many of their actions, and also reestablishes the longstanding norm that only the President or the Attorney General can speak for the United States when stating an opinion as to what the law is.
Thank you very much, Will. That was the primary purpose of this conference, to explain that they're all very important in their own way. Fertilization, I've been saying that we're going to do what we have to do, and I think the women and families, husbands, are very appreciative of it. But that was it. I do want to say while I'm up here, I've been contacted by some of the biggest companies in the world, and because of what we're doing economically and through tariffs and taxes and incentives, they want to come back into the United States. And we'll be announcing various very large companies, the biggest actually, and they'll be coming back, having to do with chips and having to do also with cars and lots of other things. We're going to be announcing some very, very big, momentous decisions are being made by companies all around the world, the biggest, and they want to come back into the U.S. Car plants are being canceled in other locations now because they want to build them here. And you read about a couple, not that I want to mention names or anything, but you read about a couple of big ones in Mexico just got canceled because they're going to be building them in the United States. And that's very simply because of what we're doing with respect to taxes, tariffs, and incentives. And I think it's a very important thing. And you'll be seeing this over the next probably over the next 2 years, to be honest, but you're going to see a lot of it over the next couple of weeks. A lot of big ones are going to be announcing. And so while we're here, I guess we can take a couple of quick questions. Go ahead, please. Please.
Mr. President, have you decided specifically what the auto tariff rate should be?
Yeah, I probably will tell you that on April 2nd, but it'll be in the neighborhood of 25%.
Semiconductors and pharmaceuticals?
It'll be 25% and higher, and it'll go very substantially higher over a course of a year. But we want to give them time to come in because, as you know, when they come into the United States and they have their plant or factory here, there is no tariff. So we want to give them a little bit of a chance. Yes, thank you.
There were a few more questions about tariffs. This went on for 36 minutes live on Newsmax, so I can't play the whole thing, but I'll give you some of the highlights.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Russia talks, your impression of how they went today, and if you're perhaps more confident or less confident of a deal after what happened today?
Well, much more confident. They were very good. Russia wants to do something. They want to stop the savage barbarianism. I mean, what's going on over there? It's soldiers are being killed by the thousands on a weekly basis. It's ridiculous. And they're not American soldiers. They're Russian soldiers, and they're Ukrainian soldiers largely, although a lot of Koreans have been killed, as you know. Quite a bit of them have been killed. They came over to fight, and a large portion have been wiped out. But we want to end it. It's a senseless war. It should have never happened, would have never happened if I was president, and it's a shame to see it. And I see pictures that you don't see, but I see pictures of fields that look just horrible. It looks like Gettysburg. If you see the old pictures of Gettysburg, it's soldiers lying all over the field, body parts all over the field. They're all dead. And this is going on a daily basis. It's a horrible thing. Both Russia and Ukraine, they're losing thousands and thousands of soldiers, and a lot of people have been killed, too. I think that's one of the things that you'll see historically, and you'll see later on as it goes along. I think people are going to be surprised at how many people, not only soldiers, have been killed in Ukraine. A lot more people than you think. Yeah, please.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, or essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. So many of the cities. I mean, they haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it 20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And, yeah, I would say that, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, it's been a long time since we've had an election. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also. Ukraine is being just wiped out. Look at what's happening to the cities. There are cities, there's not even a building standing. It's a massive, you talk about Gaza. I mean, it's literally, these cities look like Gaza. Actually, many have, percentage-wise, more buildings knocked down than in Gaza. So, people are tired of it. People want to see something happen. And, the other thing that it's been bothering me for a long time, because I solved the problem with NATO. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars into the funds of NATO when I said, you got to pay, because the United States was paying for European countries, and then they take advantage of us on trade. But I've seen it. Look, they have to pay. They have to find out, where is the money going to? We have, I believe President Zelensky said last week that he doesn't know where half of the money is that we gave him. Well, we gave them, I believe, $350 billion. But let's say it's something less than that, but it's a lot. And we have to equalize with Europe, because Europe has given a very much smaller percentage than that. I think Europe has given $100 billion, and we've given, let's say, 300 plus. And it's more important for them than it is for us. We have an ocean in between, and they don't. But where is all the money that's been given? Where is it going? And I've never seen an accounting of it. We give hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see any accounting. So I want to see peace. Look, you know why because I don't want all these people killed anymore. I'm looking at people that are being killed, and they're Russian and Ukrainian people, but they're people. Doesn't matter where they're from on the whole planet. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic, so sad. But with all of that being said, look, it is what it is. When I left, there was no chance that this could have happened. But it happened because we had incompetent leadership at many different levels.
The majority of the news conference was about Russia and Ukraine and the meetings in Saudi Arabia. The president was also asked about barring the Associated Press from news conferences because of its writing style and continuing to call the Gulf of America the Gulf of Mexico.
I have the right to do it, just like we have the right to do Mount McKinley, and nobody's even challenging that. But only essentially, it's primarily the Associated Press.
And he was, of course, asked about Elon Musk's role and DOJ.
Elon is, to me, a patriot. So, you could call him an employee, you could call him a consultant, you could call him whatever you want.
And I hope you took my advice yesterday and watched the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station on X. It was absolutely awesome as always. The rocket launch was successful, and for the first time ever, they landed the rocket's booster on a drone ship in the Bahamas. I'm not sure why, but it was cool. For more on Doge derangement syndrome, we go to Greg Kelly, who pretty much says what I said yesterday about Elon and Social Security, the IRS, etc.
Tally right now so far on savings realized by Elon Musk and President Trump and this Department of Government Efficiency, $55 billion. $55 billion. Now, certain liberals will say, oh, that's not a lot of money. Jessica Tarlov on the Fox News channel said at $1.40 billion is really not that much money. No. When you think about it. When I think about it, I think of this. A guy named Everett Dirksen, very famous United States senator, is, get this, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. I love that quote. Hey, $55 billion, that's 5.5% of $1 trillion. I think we're on the way, and it's great stuff. And when we send our taxes in, we kind of have an idea that somebody in the government is going to read that. Maybe it's a computer, but it could be a person. And Elon Musk is now a special government employee. And if he gets our paperwork, that's okay. We're okay with it. We trust him. We don't trust the IRS and those 40,000 agents or however many you guys hired. Take a look.
But there's also concern by how much access Musk and Doge staffers have to their private sensitive data.
But they have basically said, no, Elon Musk cannot start rifling through the data of Americans. That violates their privacy.
It's a pipe dream. Everybody knows that we have virtually no privacy anyway. Anytime you walk on the street, your picture's being taken by 16 different cameras all the time. We gave up on privacy a long time ago. I like it. We don't have it because of corporate America. Elon Musk is not a threat to our privacy. This stuff, though, is a threat to our security. The crazy expenditures from USAID and more that are just coming to light. $19 million for biodiversity conversation. Not conversion, but a conversation in Nepal, home of Mount Everest, I believe. $1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia. Nobody should have any confidence about anything in Liberia, all right? Liberia is so incredibly fouled up. Sorry. $2.5 million for inclusive democracies in Southern Africa. How's democracy in Africa going? I mean, for real here. Come on, let's be real. $9.7 million for the University of California, Berkeley to develop a cohort of Cambodian youth with enterprise-driven skills. Cambodian youth have that without Berkeley. Goodness gracious. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. Okay. $20 million for fiscal federalism in Nepal, where that mountain is, right? $40 million for the Gender Equality and Women Empowerment Hub. $29 million to strengthen the political landscape in Bangladesh. That'll fix all their problems. $14 million for social. You know this money is going to politicians, right? Our politicians. They're skimming off the top. Everybody knows that. $2 million to develop sustainable recycling models to increase socioeconomic. Skip it. Skip all this junk. It's ludicrous. And we're so happy that that Elon Musk and President Trump are all over it. And to hear the swamp cry about it is kind of amusing when you find out the real story.
People are really scared. I think that, 12 days ago, people knew where their next paycheck was coming from. They knew how they were going to pay for their kids' daycare, their medical bills, and then all gone overnight. Welcome to the world. Capitalism. We don't have lifetime employment. She, by the way, was a speechwriter. Okay, a speechwriter for Joe Biden, for Samantha Power, a contractor. People lose their jobs all the time in the private sector. Chevron lays off people. Walmart lays off people. You name it, they've been like Kroger, all right? It goes on and on and on like this. Every day, every single day, major employers are cutting back in America. Now what happens to the federal government? Somehow it's a what? It's a tragedy? No, it's not.
Is that not exactly what I said yesterday? Welcome to the real world. Thank you, Greg Kelly, who, by the way, also has a radio show. I don't know that he's necessarily a radio guy, but he does a radio show. If you listened yesterday, you know what I'm talking about. And don't forget, up to 8 months pay and benefits. Probably not that woman if she was a contractor, but many of the people losing their government jobs are getting up to, or being offered, up to 8 months of pay, including benefits. MSNBC is now using Social Security as its latest fear tactic, saying for the first time in the history of America, your Social Security is not guaranteed. I don't know about you, but I have been hearing for at least the last 20 years how Social Security was going to run out of money. And when I get there and you get there, there's a good chance it won't be there, which sounds like it's not guaranteed to me. Last night, they said President Trump's revenge-filled retribution tour, also known as his second term of presidency, shut down the JFK Library in Boston, which was temporarily shut down due to layoffs of probationary employees. Trump has talked about that. Elon's talked about that. Caroline Leavitt has talked about that. The cutting of probationary employees was the result of a Trump executive order that led to the library temporarily being closed. It reopened today, but MSNBC made a huge deal about it, saying not the Reagan Library, not the Nixon Library, but the JFK Library, a Democrat in a Democratic city. Simply revenge. Yeah, not the Reagan or Nixon Library, or the Clinton or the Jimmy Carter Library, or any other Democrat's library. Only the one staffed, apparently, with probationary employees. The JFK Library, as in JFK, whose nephew Trump just appointed to his cabinet. You also heard old Chucky Schumer and others blaming the plane crash in Toronto, Canada, with Canadian air traffic controllers on the DOJ cuts at the FAA. The topic of conversation on Rob Schmitt Tonight with new Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy.
All right, welcome back. It is clearly the video of the day. This video, this Toronto plane crash coming in, taken by another pilot that was about to take off. Watch as this jet slams into an icy runway in Canada on a cold February day. Incredibly, all 80 people on board this plane survived. This video is everywhere today. The American left has been very quick to blame Donald Trump for a plane crash in another country. Take a listen.
This is happening against the backdrop of massive cuts across the federal government, including at the FAA.
This is going to yet again raise the concern about FAA staffing.
You see planes crashing left and right. You hear about a bird flu, and you hear, on the other hand, about scientists being fired at NIH. You know, at some point, people may connect the dots.
And by the way, prices are supposed to come down, not airplanes.
Didn't know the FAA handled air traffic into Toronto. I wasn't aware of that. Eric Swalwell writing on X, since 2009, how many airlines crashed before Trump came into office? 0. When does Trump start taking responsibility for the next plane crash? Swalwell's never been the smartest guy. Chuck Schumer, though, the head of Democrats in the Senate. Trump's doing massive layoffs across the FAA, including safety specialists, making our skies less and less safe. Democrats are fighting to protect the flying public. Well, you know what? Let's talk to the man in charge. Sean Duffy is the U.S. Transportation Secretary, and he joins us now. Mr. Secretary, great to have you on tonight. And let's just start right there. Your response to these accusations that our FAA is not prepared, and that's the reason why we're seeing events like this.
Yeah, so first off, Rob, thanks for having me on. First time with you. And, you know, listen, when we had the crash at DCA, it was Joe Biden that allowed helicopters to fly through that airspace, not Donald Trump. We look at what happened in Philadelphia. That plane was inspected under the Biden regime, Biden administration. To cast blame on this administration for the policy failures of the last 4 years and say it's our fault is outrageous, but it's rich. So I want to talk quickly about the FAA. Yeah. So it's true that less than 400 people were laid off at the FAA. There's 45,000 employees there. So this is 0.89%. They were employed for less than a year, so they were temporary employees. They were not in critical positions. We're actually trying to hire and have been hiring more FAA air traffic controllers. We're hiring more inspectors. Those critical safety positions have been protected and have grown. And so these are, other support positions that have been laid off. So to say that this is a staffing cut that caused a crash in Toronto, give me a break. It had been snowing for 2 days. There was ice on the runway, high winds. I'm not going to speculate about what happened, but you can watch the video and draw some conclusions yourself that it probably wasn't Donald Trump that caused that crash.
And is the FAA even involved in this landing? I mean, I know the plane originated in the United States, but it's landing in Toronto. I would doubt that. Do we have anything to do with that?
No. So that's the Canadian airspace is controlled by Canada, and actually the investigation here is going to be done by Transport Canada, which is like our NTSB. So no, I mean this is they control their own airspace. Yeah. But again, Rob, it doesn't look like this was an air traffic control problem. Something else was going on as that pilot came down and landed that plane. We're going to wait for the investigation. I'm not going to speculate, but again, I'm not even going to blame air traffic controllers in Canada for this crash.
New Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who also had an update on the deadly D.C. plane crash.
D.C. crash with the helicopter. We haven't heard a lot there. I know investigations take a while. Do we have any idea what happened there? There was speculation maybe that the pilots inside the helicopter didn't hear a warning. Do we know who was flying that helicopter?
Yeah, so I think I don't want to get ahead of the NTSB, but we know that helicopter was flying, 300 feet in the air. It was supposed to be below 200 feet. Yeah. It had inched away from the eastern boundary of the river, closer to DCA. It shouldn't have probably been there. They said the pilots of the helicopter said they saw the landing American airline flight, and they would maintain separation. They said that twice. They didn't do that. Again, so there's going to be a whole review, and there's probably some recommendations that'll go to air traffic controllers, but also we got to look at what the military is doing. And by the way, Rob, you should not be flying military missions, training missions at 9 o'clock at night when we're landing civilian aircraft. If you want to fly a mission to get certified for the military, and you have to fly it in that airspace, fly it at 1 o'clock in the morning when we're not taking off and landing airplanes.
I was going to say, am I crazy to think that, we have, I mean, this is, I guess, the busiest, one of the busiest runways in the country. You've got about every 90 seconds a plane comes through. Am I crazy to think that military helicopters should probably not fly through this area at all?
You're probably right. There's 28 entities that fly through that airspace. And so there's a lot of aircraft that go through. Right now, I worked with the FAA. We put in restrictions around the airspace so the president can fly through there, or if there's a life flight mission that goes through there. But beyond that, no helicopters can fly in that airspace right off of runway 33 where this air crash happened. Can I make one other point here, Rob? But we look at the systems that are so old right now at the FAA. They're 20, 30, 40 years old, the equipment that they're using, and our air traffic controllers do a great job with that old equipment. But think in 1982, the computer screen that you had, you're probably not old enough, Rob, but the computer screen, if you were old enough in 1982, I mean, old stuff, I mean, almost, corded phones, and it's so antiquated, and we've spent billions of dollars to upgrade this system in America, and it hasn't been upgraded.
Again, that is new Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who, yes, was on a reality TV show or two and worked for ESPN for a bit, but also served in Congress as a representative of Wisconsin and, as he just said, worked for the FAA as well, as opposed to our previous Transportation Secretary, who was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. The DOJ has sent a letter, by the way, to Senator Chuck Schumer saying we take threats very serious. And they are demanding answers, not related to what he said recently about the FAA, but from his threats against Supreme Court Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
Remember that a few years ago? Now the Trump DOJ wants to have a conversation with Chucky, and maybe they will also look into how he's amassed an $80 million fortune as well. And let's shift gears a bit as we wrap it up. More corporations are apparently saying they're retreating from DEI initiatives, but are they really following through? That was the topic of conversation with Katrina Zisch and some experts on American Agenda.
Will these moves of erasing publicly facing language about DEI actually result in the practices themselves from being erased? Let's ask the founder of Allison May PR and media relations expert Allison Maloney and former UPenn swimmer and ambassador at RileyGainesCenter.org, Paula Scanlon. All right, welcome to both of you. We have all spoken together independently about all of these DEI efforts and all of the negative things they have. Do you think, Paula, I'm going to bring that last question to you. Do you think this will actually change the practices, or do you think this is just sort of a move in name only?
I do think it's a little bit going to be a move in name only because we still have people in these offices working that are going to be pushing these agendas, right? Just because the pamphlet doesn't say these 1,000 words anymore. There are still people who are pushing these meetings, pushing things. And even in my corporate office, I had people who were very left-leaning when I actually worked in corporate finance. And there were people who were pushing these meetings. They made us read books about transgenderism and pride things. And it wasn't being pushed by our company. It was being pushed by the individuals that work there. And the people who are on our side aren't comfortable speaking up, can't share their viewpoints, and so it's one-sided. And so unfortunately, until we get back to a place where everyone's able to say what they feel and talk about these things and say, hey, I voted for Trump openly, or I don't believe in this openly, we're still going to run into these problems.
I think that's a good point, because, Allison, I worked at a place previously where we were forced to sit in these all-day seminars telling us to question our inherent biases, and then being criticized if you walked into a room and one of your regional language affectations might be to say, hi, guys, you'd have to apologize to everybody. I mean, that was a real thing, and it is shocking to me that that existed then, but it is so entrenched now that it's hard to imagine people being able to say, ooh, that was a bad thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I have a friend who works in a hospital, and I remember her texting me saying, I'm sitting in this class and they're telling me things I never thought, I didn't even know existed, and things that I have to listen to and things I have to think and how I have to treat others. I think to Paula's point, it's not necessarily maybe the CEOs or the heads, it's the people inside, and it's a small group, but they have the loudest voices, and they're the ones that push for all of this. And I think that these banks and these corporations are slowly trying to, get rid of some of the language on their websites, get rid of maybe the pamphlets to appease the media, media to appease the president. They also, may be facing some sort of lawsuit for people who are upset the fact that they are not taking part in DEI. So I don't think they can win. But to Paula's point, the majority of people voted for Trump, and they want to see these changes. And I don't think the banks or any of these corporations want to be dealing with, major lawsuits or any sort of negative press.
Yeah, it seems, though, to me, to both of your points, that I'll say unbrainwashing people is not easy. It takes time. And I mean, people were brainwashed over years with more and more things happening. I mean, it happened to you with swimming, where somehow you were the one who was called racist simply because you did not want to share a locker room with a fully intact biological man. So I'm sure a lot of these people at these companies, like you said, those within, are going to be attacking and lambasting people who actually are just trying to, I'm going to say it, get back to normal.
That's Newsmax host Katrina Zish with Allison Maloney and former collegiate swimmer and ambassador at RileyGainesCenter.org, Paula Scanlon, on American Agenda. On Wall Street, stocks opened slightly lower this morning. Oil was higher. Gold was up more than $3 to $29.50 and change. Bitcoin and most other cryptos up as well. Bitcoin at the time of this recording, just over $96,000. XRP was up 10 cents at $2.60. And as I mentioned, most other cryptos in the green thus far as well. So President Trump is in Miami and then heading back to the White House. The conversation continues over the ceasefire, peace talks, whatever you want to call it, in Saudi Arabia, DOJ, Capitol Hill hearings, and whatever else breaks throughout the day. Be sure to keep up with all of it on Newsmax, Newsmax 2, that's N2, and at Newsmax.com. It all begins each and every morning with Wake Up America and the prime time lineup of Greta Van Susteren, Rob Schmitt Tonight, Finnerty, Greg Kelly Reports, Chris Plant, and the Right Squad, with expert analysis from people like Judge Napolitano, Hogan Gidley, political analyst Mark Halpern, Senator Rick Santorum, Professor Alan Dershowitz, members of the Trump administration, and more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for checking out the Newsmax Daily. Pass it on to your friends, family, and basically anybody else. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to, and keep on Fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.